Hi, my name is Joey Legrand. Today we're going to talk about understanding RxNorm. It might be a two-parter because there's a lot to get to. So let's get started. What is RxNorm? Yeah, RxNorm is a medication ontology terminology put together by the National Library of Medicine and maintained by them as well. This is a definition, basically, of standardized nomenclature for clinical drugs. This is a really great place to start for getting yourself familiar with RxNorm, where the data comes from, how it's put together, the things you need to be aware of. Don't have time to go through all of this in 5 minutes, but it also has information about how to load it into a database if you want to start working with it. The other important concepts to know when you're working with RxNorm data are term types. We talked about these a little bit in previous lessons. This is things like a SCD for a clinical drug, which is ingredient strength dose form. Things like multiple ingredients, MIN versus individual ingredients, IN. Dose forms versus dose form groups. So those are all term types. And then RxNorm maintains relationships between those term types, so you can get from multiple ingredient to an individual ingredient, go from product to a dose form. So all of these relationships involve some queries between the different tables that are in RxNorm to get from one place to another, and it can get kind of complicated depending on how many steps you want to take. But all the documentation for those relationships is here. And the last thing is attributes. And attributes are where things like strength, numerator, denominator, units, and values are stored. So if you want to work with strengths of products, then this is an important thing to know, is the attributes section. And other important thing is the NDC association with Rx GUIs is stored in the attributes table as well. So this is what it would look like if you load RxNorm into a database. There's three main tables you work with. RxNConso is the main one, RxNRel is a relationship one, and RxNSat, which is like the attribute mostly information contained in this. And one thing to notice is, like, you look at this and nothing looks medication related except maybe Rx. There's lots of just shorthand, abbreviations that are really not that approachable for somebody getting started with this. But once you read the documentation, it makes a little bit more sense. If you just wanted to work with RxNorm visually and navigate it and explore it, RxNav is a great resource for that. You can start from searching for an Rx GUI or a name or an NDC, and clicking on any one of these elements and navigating to see, this product has this ingredient, it has this dose form group, it has this precise ingredient, without having to know anything about the data structure or SQL. I just want to point that out there for people who are not interested in learning SQL, but just wanted to explore RxNorm data. But for those that do want to work with SQL, this is an example of what a query looks like in RxNorm to get from a product like fluoxetine, the fluoxetine solution that we looked at in RxNav here, to the ingredient that product contains. And so I mentioned that relationship kind of walking concept, walking from one term type to another. And then we mentioned term types themselves. So this query, you don't need to really read it in detail, but you start with the SCD that you're looking for, which is the 310386 term type of SCD. And you have to navigate from there to SCDC, which is one of the steps, and then from there to an ingredient. There's lots of table joins that happen between those three tables multiple times to get from one place to another. And this is how most people work with RxNorm data, and how I have in the past as well. The main problem with this, in my opinion, is just kind of like long and abstract for anybody who's not familiar with these concepts, and it's just hard to read and come back to later and kind of understand what you were doing. But it works, and it gives you the answer of fluoxetine down here. One of the things that I want to talk about probably in the second half of this is a different way to think about the data in RxNorm. Instead of associating things with like term types and relationships and blah, 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 just being able to capture them in conceptual ideas like clinical products and ingredients. And you can see this query is much simpler. You're basically going from a clinical product table to an ingredient table and specifying the Rx GUI you want, and you get the same answer. So we'll talk more about that in the next talk.